Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Wait a minute. That's not the case. Welcome back, my friends, to your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. Browns 3D. Now, with the OBR, your host, Jeff Lloyd, joined today by Pete Smith. I, I tried to talk to you guys about this yesterday, and I guess this is just the way it's going to be for all of the offseason and in the draft. Pete, normally, if you had the number 2 pick and you were looking to rebuild your entire quarterback room, what we would be doing right now, we'd be probably saying, hey, what is the dream scenario for the Browns quarterback room in 2025? Right now, and, I talked about it yesterday and certainly talked about it a little bit on social media. And, I messaged Pete last night. I'm like, I'm actually to the point I have to try to talk myself into Daniel Jones. Yes, this is a cry for help, but this is where we're at. Some of the options some of you all are giving me, I mean, look, if they're pushing 40 years old or they're already over 40 years old, just get out of here. Just stop. Tony Grossi suggests Jimmy Garoppolo. I put out a tweet. I kind of make a little fun of it. And then I have somebody try to tell me that that's actually the correct move they should do or go with. Pete, we got to do it. We're obligated to do it. There's just nothing that anybody is truly going to find palatable when this is all said and done. Maybe, everybody, certain divisions will, get excited about whatever rookie is probably added or 2 rookies. And even I saw somebody bring up the scenario of drafting 2 quarterbacks. If it's a terrible quarterback class, it's hard enough to find 1, let alone 2.
I don't think any quarterback that's going to be available on the open market is going to satisfy everyone. Maybe not really satisfy the vast majority of people. I think the only move that will sort of be universally just sort of accepted, and that's begrudgingly, is if Kirk Cousins is cut and they sign him to a $1.25 million contract, and it's still going to come with, okay, but what else are you doing at quarterback? So that's fine. I mean, that's ultimately going to be the point. That's going to be the offseason that nobody's going to be satisfied with anyway. And that would have been the case for Sam Darnold this past year. And that would have been the case. That was the case when the Browns brought in Joe Flacco off the couch. Nobody was happy with any of these options. And then suddenly now we can't bear to lose Joe Flacco. It's just, this is the situation, the position you're in. You are betting on your ability to build the team around the quarterback. And I've said this all along, I don't care who the quarterback is, whether you take them second overall, sign one, trade them. Your mission is to make this team as quarterback friendly as possible, to take as much of the load off of them as you can, so that you're not asking them to carry you, because that's not going to lead you to success. It's not what led you to success the 2023 when they won 11 games. So it's really about the rest of the roster. And for that reason, it's going to be the other moves they make in March and then April.
And here's even the thing, though, and people who just want to think the Cousins thing could work. Look, Kirk Cousins is going to make an unbelievable amount of money next year. It doesn't necessarily mean he has to play. I mean, he could take that 1.2 and go to San Francisco, where maybe the odds would be better for the team having a more successful season, with every intention of just being the backup quarterback. Sure, he could come here. But you also talk about things like with some of these guys, there is legit. And when you have the commissioner of the NFL basically telling us all we're going to 18 games, certainly, that's coming in, all signs, but just say all the money points to it. We're not stupid, obviously. But a lot of these options, Pete, you're banking on, how long they can play. You saw it blow up in Pittsburgh's face with Russell Wilson. Every other team, and Kirk Cousins, Atlanta, it just got to the point where they just realized that the guy they drafted was better than the guy they paid a boatload of money to. The one reason I say Daniel Jones is, here's a guy who's still in the prime of his career. Here's a guy that, in 2022, the numbers weren't staggering by any means. Don't get me wrong. I think it was 15 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, 700 yards on the ground with his legs. Did a miraculous job to close out the regular season to get his team to the playoffs. Went on the road the following week in Minnesota against Kirk Cousins. I'm just trying to find something where, and I know I heard you talk about this. I think it was the other night with Brad, where, you're trying to find who could be the Sam Darnold of 2025. And, am I making that bet confidently? No, no way whatsoever. But, I agree. If maybe there's a guy, it could be Daniel Jones.
He started 71 football games. He's played in 2 playoff games and won one of them. Experience is always huge. Guys tend to get better the more they get. And, that Giants roster on offense, it was Saquon Barkley and a bunch of Smurfs. So you weren't like putting Daniel Jones in a great position to succeed. Now, I don't think he was worth 6th pick overall. I don't think he was worth $160 million. But the Browns aren't doing either of those things. They are taking him in a position where theoretically would be taking him in a position where he's being asked to sort of guide your team. The Giants were asking him to be the franchise quarterback. He wasn't that. But if he was, making, $10 million instead of the 40, you would have been generally fine with what you were getting at Daniel Jones. So much of it becomes a return on investment. Do I think he's a great quarterback? No. If there was a great quarterback, that the Browns wouldn't have access to them because they wouldn't leave. They wouldn't get out there on the open market. So this is sort of the world you're living in. It's a world of flawed guys. And it's asking Kevin Stefanski, who he likes best, what he likes for what he wants to do offensively, and then what else they can build around them to make it easier. If you have a Jerry Jeudy and a healthy David Njoku, and you have Cedric Tillman, and you add another wide receiver to that mix, that's, may not be Jeudy, but is a quality receiver, you add a running game and you get some more blocking, you can feel and play good defense. You can feel reasonably confident that Daniel Jones is not going to kill you. And that would be a massive step up. And if Daniel Jones surprises you, then now you're a frisky team that's, competing for the playoffs. So that is the type of guy you're looking for. And my position would be get more than one, get multiple of those guys, have them compete and see who wins.
Yeah, there's no, way around it. This is, a scenario where you were going to bring in 3. I'm not moving off of DTR. He can be here for the summer. He can, fight out for a roster spot as well. Even though, and it's really obviously tough to, critique DTR's game off of this season, certainly. I'm not saying the whole intention was to, out and out lose, but, I don't think they really just let DTR go out there and kind of rip it. And granted, parts were missing then. By the way, Daniel Jones in this playoff game we're speaking about, where he won on the road in Minnesota, his weapons that day were Isaiah Hodgins, Derek Slayton, Saquon Barkley, obviously, Richie James, Daniel Bellinger, and Lawrence Cager. So an absolute murderer's row.
Former Browns wide receiver Lawrence Cager?
Yes, I believe, in tight end, hybrid, Miami guy, I mean, absolute murderer's row right there. And, it totally, makes sense, and by the way, Saquon only ran for like 50 yards that day. So before anybody tries to say, what did Saquon do? Daniel Jones did supply 400 total yards of offense in that game, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Yeah, that's, the best Daniel Jones has ever been.
That got him the contract.
Yes, when the Giants refused to pick up a 5th-year option, that was how Daniel Jones responded, and good for him. Had a great year that year. But this is the conversations we're gonna have, and basically, it was, your parents, like, you're eating vegetables with dinner, and I know you don't like any of them. So which one do you like a little bit less, or like a little bit, this is it, guys. I've said it, and I'll continue to say it. Yes, it is great that the Cleveland Browns are moving on from this terrible, terrible situation with their previous quarterback. But this is also the worst year, and probably, I couldn't even tell you how many, to where you were trying to rebuild a quarterback room. Whatever name you bring up, there will be issues, especially with the draft class. The draft class will be, well, can you do this? Can we get him to do this? Can he improve on that? Can he improve on that? The veterans, it's going to be, well, they've never shown that everybody that is going to come in here has some sort of work in progress. And if you think you're walking down the franchise quarterback depot and just picking somebody up, it's just not going to happen. If you have interest in Sam Darnold, I get it, truly do. And it's probably, he probably looks prettier each day we get closer to free agency. Doesn't mean there ain't warts there. And Sam had a magical year that came basically crashing down towards the end. But this is the conversations, and this is where we're at. While we're here, and it's kind of just been quarterback week here, I guess, because, as we've gone through it, the more and more, look, I'm going to try to cater to, obviously what the talking points are. And, these are definitely the talking points now. This is one, Pete, we haven't hit on a ton, but, this is one that keeps coming across. The thing with, and this is something now that, you're really going to look at this guy under a Browns lens, because there is already one major connection between Jalen Milroe and currently Tommy Rees. Jalen Milroe's best year at University of Alabama certainly was with Tommy Rees. The Browns now will have Bubba Van Schroen coaching Jalen Milroe in the Senior Bowl. It's not a question of, it's a slam dunk, but you already have a great amount of due diligence done. You're going to get more done. And if it's not one of the top two at 2, and look, it very well could be at the end of the day. Jalen Milroe and the Browns, this is, something where you just can't turn your eyes away from it, because there's just a lot of connecting parts here.
So Jalen Milroe is, to me, the quarterback every coach would want to work with. Just otherworldly physical tools, 6'2" and change, almost 225, extremely fast, strong, all those things. Super smart in terms of at least like the classroom. Has a master's in business administration and won the Campbell Trophy, which is like the academic Heisman. Now the question becomes, how much does that intelligence work itself into processing speed? Because I think there are some questions there. But beyond that, it's sort of, and there, one of the, I guess, I don't know if it's a complaint. Jalen Milroe's arm is so fast that it almost makes it hard for him to take something off the ball at times. And when he misses, it forces him to be more precise than you would like him to have to be. So when he makes a great throw, it looks unbelievable, a lot like DTR did in college. But when you throw like that, it doesn't give you a ton of room for error. But like from a data analytics standpoint, like looking at this historical data and what Jim Coburn does,
yep, Jalen
Milroe crushes it in terms of just data. He's like top end is like Robert Griffin III relative to the data point. So getting somebody like that you can work with and coach up and not be forced to put on the field is really interesting. But it is important to figure out what, can he process faster? Are there things that they can do to adjust his mechanics to make life easier for him? And in that sense, you almost, depending on the answer they come up with, it could be they just diagnose him as it's not going to work, or they may look at him like Josh Allen, where it's he didn't get the development in a way, like he didn't get an orthodox development curve in the way that like Josh Allen was horrendous in college. But the calculus was that because he was so unrefined and not taught really, that if they could correct these things, it would allow him to play much better. If that's the calculus you come to with Jalen Milroe, like that becomes a potential steal, and you have data to back it up. Like comparatively, his like efficiency and stuff blows away Anthony Richardson. It's not even close for people who want to make that comparison. So at that point, you start getting into this thing. Is this a sort of a plutonium version of Lamar Jackson, where Lamar Jackson was way better in college, even though he had questions coming out of Louisville and he had played more football. That's the other part that, hurts you with Milroe. And you have to be okay with the fact that Milroe may not play for like a couple of years other than being like an occasional package player. But let's say you take Milroe at 33 or you flip a pick or whatever and you get in the first round to get that fifth-year option. It doesn't preclude you from then going into next year and drafting another quarterback with your first-round pick or whatever combination of picks you want to use, and you just attack it that way. And then you see what works. But like for me, just looking at Jalen Milroe, I sort of look at him as on a development curve, and this is really unlikely how the NFL wants to work, is Steve McNair. Coming out of Alcorn State, obviously a different deal, but the Houston Oilers took like 3 years to sort of figure it out without really another option. They just had sort of veteran stopgaps. It's not like Jordan Love with the Green Bay Packers, where you're sitting behind Aaron Rodgers or Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre. Like they just decided this is how we're going to do this. And ultimately Steve McNair became a really good quarterback. It's just not upper echelon, but just a very good quarterback that got them to the Super Bowl, got them to AFC championships, like that type of thing. So that is an unsatisfying way to sort of draft Jalen Milroe. If you're sitting there going, we're taking him 33rd or late first round and going, by the way, you're never going to see him after preseason, which I would love, but might be unsatisfying. And then there's this, does the organization feel pressure to put him on the field if things aren't going well? There's all these whole different things, or injuries happen, so on and so forth.
And it's becoming by far, one of the biggest problems. And look, college football, and it's fantastic. And look, I'll say it a million times. I want these kids to get every penny they deserve. But, with NIL, with guys moving around the way they are, it's not helping the development of a lot of quarterbacks. And, it's certainly leading to the issues that are currently within, the NFL. But Jalen Milroe becomes extremely, extremely interesting. Certainly does. I believe Kyle McCord, Pete, also tested well under the James Coburn lens as well.
As long as you're okay with the fact that he can't move at all, yes.
Well, counterpoint, somebody that everybody wants this team to take at number 2 overall doesn't really move very well at all either.
Yeah, and you know how I feel about both of them. I'm not interested in either one. And I think.
All right, gun to your head. You got to take one of them. Are you taking Ward or are you taking Sanders?
Am I taking Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders? Oh, I'll take Cam Ward easily. It's not even close.
This is what I'm trying to say as well. With Cam Ward, I can at least see some throws that I see translate to the Cleveland Browns offense.
I look at Cam Ward and I see a guy that if I'm a defense, I'm worried about him. I'm worried about what he can do on a football field. And that's not to say Shedeur can't do those things, but I'm not nearly as worried. And part of the reason I'm not nearly as worried, I know where he's going to be every play. He can't move. He's not going anywhere. And the game that really stood out to me and terrified me in a number of ways was the Pittsburgh Steelers Atlanta Falcons game this year, early in the year. And Kirk Cousins freely admitted his Achilles wasn't right, and just it wasn't good. But what the Steelers were able to do when they knew where the quarterback was going to be on every play, it was an absolute slaughter. The way teams can draw up pressure packages, knowing exactly where a guy's going to be, it's not even fair when you're good at it. And that scares the crap out of me with these guys. I think the NFL has gotten to a point where, you have to be able to move a little, even if it's just being able to move the pocket and adjust the protections so that the defense at least has to be honest. But when you are constantly in a drop back, and Shedeur is not Kirk Cousins coming off Achilles bad, but I do worry he's like Teddy Bridgewater without athleticism. And I just don't, and I have serious concerns about that. I have serious concerns about the amount of sacks he takes. I have serious concerns about the amount of protection he will need in the NFL. And the Browns certainly have the ability to pass protect, but like it's really hard when the defense sort of knows what's coming at them on that front. So like it's a huge concern, and I have the same problem with a guy like Syracuse,
Kyle McCord.
Kyle McCord. And what you saw with Kirk Cousins is he got sped up so much that he's either getting killed or he's just throwing it. And you see a lot more turnover-worthy plays this year than you ever have in his career. Now, if he can recover the Achilles and so on and so forth, and Kyle McCord may be able to move a little bit more than that, but just based on the data that Jim Coburn provided, you're not going anywhere, and that is of concern. He's interesting, I guess, but where do you pick that? Like, if you're telling me you got to take Kyle McCord in the third round, no. If you're taking him in the fifth or sixth, okay. Like, it's a shot at that point, but there are still other guys I'd probably be more interested in than them. And I think that's the problem with this quarterback class. I think you're already seeing it. Guys are getting sort of moved up out of desperation. And the comparison I would make, I don't know how many quarterbacks in this class are a better prospect than Spencer Rattler was last year. Spencer Rattler went in the fifth round. But like, if you're talking about Will Howard, if you're talking about Kyle McCord, if you're talking about Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, they're all going to go much higher by virtue, nature abhors a vacuum, especially in the quarterback market. Somebody's probably going to end up going somewhere else in the first round, if not multiple somebodies, and you're going to probably end up with 3 or 4. Do they really deserve that? To be determined. I would argue no, but that's sort of the situation you're in. And this is what happens when you sort of put yourself in a position where you're now forcing a quarterback selection. Look, if the value hits right for the Browns, by all means, pull the trigger, take your guy. But I don't think you want to force a pick that I think you have to compare this class against some of the other classes, some of the other prospects you would take. And I think it's going to finish grade relatively poorly in that sort of standard.
Look, again, don't shoot the messengers here. We got to do this. We got to report on it, but you can't just punt every time you get the ball or take a knee 3 times and punt it then. You're going to have to put an offense out there. And again, it's just not the year to have to be doing what they're doing. But, they had all intents and purposes of being on a huge run here with a quarterback that obviously every part of that just absolutely flamed out. NFL playoff picks. Well, we got a tie to this point, 4-2. I took a L on the Chargers. Pete took the win on the Houston Texans. We both were over the Ravens. We both were on Buffalo. We were both on Philly. I get the doink from the Commanders, which makes the difference there for me. And we both took an L on the Minnesota Vikings, so both 4-2. I do have a little bit of an issue, I think, with the way the games are lined up. I really think the Baltimore-Buffalo game should be your Saturday night 8 o'clock game. They chose to go differently. We'll take them in order. Pete, Houston, Kansas City. Kansas City, it's kind of been, unplugged here for a while. Hoping for health and kind of hoping that maybe for some of their veterans, like, Travis Kelce, you saw a different version of Kelce last year in the playoffs, and maybe the rest had something to do with it.
I suspect that this is where Houston's run ends. I think Chris Jones is going to go off. I think C.J. Stroud is going to run into problems against this defense, and I think Patrick Mahomes will do what he does, and they'll figure it out. Plus, I think that Houston defense really, really played well in the first matchup. I don't know if they can play to that level again. I think the Chiefs are going to be able to run the ball a little bit better, and they're getting healthier. Can they create an explosive with Xavier Worthy? Can they, is Rashee Rice getting, I think it's further down the road, but like Patrick Mahomes will do what he does, and I think they'll figure it out.
I also think Houston's defense is not going to get some of the advantageous that they got from the Chargers offense last week. Justin Herbert doesn't throw 4 interceptions. Certainly a lot of guys misplaying balls, things that could have, helped Los Angeles in that. Again, look, I didn't think Houston was going to win week 1, so therefore I don't think they're going to win week 2. Certainly, things are going well for Houston. I think it also, you look at this, for Houston even be in this situation with, Diggs and Tank Dell both out. It shows that they really could have been maybe pretty special this year if they, it had all worked out that way. But again, maybe it's a little bit of a step down for Houston for a ramp up in year 3. But yeah, this one's kind of easy here. Kansas City. Both of us will take a dot on Kansas City here. Washington, Detroit, Saturday night. Again, I still think this should be the Baltimore Buffalo game. The Washington story to this point has been great. Detroit, you're getting a couple of guys back. But I mean, if you get in a situation where Jaden Daniels just hits his groove and can obviously contribute heavily with his legs, so now you're basically right now playing a lot of second team guys, reserve guys, and if Jaden Daniels is out there gassing out some of those guys, and you're basically bringing in bag boys at the grocery store to play after that point, I think they can probably hang around. I think we learned from Washington's own head coach last Sunday night in Tampa Bay that he certainly realizes his defense is not where he hopes it to be in just year 1. Why they kept going for everything that they were doing. Detroit's offense right now is white hot. I believe the game against the Vikings, they put up like 34. And that was with 4 touchdowns from Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's not even counting all the other talent they have around there. Detroit was just on an absolute heater to close it out in the regular season. I think this is one where Washington hangs around maybe halftime into the third quarter, but one mistake, one turnover, and all of a sudden Detroit's got you at double digits, and they just do not let off the accelerator.
Yeah, you're asking Jaden Daniels to basically
carry this team over the number 1 seed.
Yeah, you're asking him to be Superman, and while that's possible, the problem I have with Washington, and this almost killed them the first playoff game, they're not good in the red zone. Cliff Kingsbury is not good in the red zone, and
Yep.
I think Detroit will shine there. With Jahmyr Gibbs, with the number of passing options they have. And I think that's going to be the difference in the game, where I think Detroit has a number of advantages anyway. But, if Tampa's keeping it close or Washington's keeping it close, I think there's going to be a red zone push where they just fail. And that's going to be the difference in the game. And I don't think Detroit will.
No, and I think Washington will get points. I do, but I mean, if you told me, we're talking, 38-24, 38-27, I would not be stunned here. Detroit, the way that offense is humming right now, and I think to the point, and I guess it would be fair just to at least mention, who knows? Detroit's got 2 coordinators right now who are extremely busy with what their 2025 is going to be. Not that you're, pointing a finger and saying either one of them is slacking in what their current jobs are. But you have Aaron Glenn, certainly, and certainly Johnson here with, eyes much for them on a bigger prize. And, could it hurt? Maybe. But I think both units are rocking so well right now, it's probably not going to be an issue. Early game Sunday. Right now, the forecast does call for snow. Doesn't seem to be significant. It's, calling for maybe, 3 to 5 inches, but over, maybe a 4 to 5 to 6 hour window for that snow to come down. I don't have to tell you people in Ohio, that is very maintainable. Sir, it causes an issue, but it's basically not going to wreck things. Look, everybody grew up somewhere. It's not like just because they're the Los Angeles Rams, all these guys have lived in Los Angeles their entire lives. I think the Rams could come in here, and I think the Rams could make a little noise, and they could make it interesting. And, Philly has not had a lot of pressure put on them at all this season. They really haven't. So if you're the Rams, the ideal game plan here is to basically push Philly and get Philly to the point where, they are maybe on the wrong end and have to chase. And, they need their defense to make some stops. And, they need their defense to, stop a Puka Nacua or, slow down the Novocaine style that is Kieran Williams. I'll save my pick. You give yours. I'll save mine. I want to do it. Yeah, I want to do it. I just don't know if I got the guts to do it.
Eagles, and it's going to look. We saw this game. The Eagles just ran over the Rams without any hesitation. This was the Saquon Barkley MVP argument game, and the Eagles' offensive line absolutely dominated up front. Left no one alive in that one in terms of they got everybody on the Rams defense, and I think the Eagles pass rush is going to be a huge problem. I think Nolan Smith could end up having a big game with speed off the edge and having.
What's he weigh again? What's Nolan Smith weigh again? What does he weigh again?
Might weigh 240.
Yes. So 240-pound edge players can get things done in this league. Okay.
He's fantastic. He's fantastic for the Eagles, and they have the defensive interior. They have one of the best in the league on the inside. So somebody
I would love to spring out of there, and hopefully his last game with the Eagles is very soon, and he can find his way to Northeast Ohio.
You and I disagree on that, but that's all right. I'm not. I loved him coming out of the draft. I don't want to spend big bucks on him, Milton Williams, but whatever. But either way, I just think this is a trench game. The cold weather and everything else is going to have a huge impact. If Matt Stafford has a game like he just had, where he's just carving dudes up, that's fine. But I don't think the Eagles are going to play defense anywhere nearly the way that the Vikings did. You just blitzed Stafford endlessly, and he's just like, okay, I'll just keep dumping the ball off. The Eagles aren't going to do that. They don't have to do that. And they're going to be in a much better situation with guys like Zach Bond playing in the middle of the field. So ultimately, I think the Eagles are going to win. I think they're going to win with a statement.
I don't know. I think I don't know. It's maybe just a gut feeling because I don't know if there's much here I can put factually that I think the Rams can, go in there and get it done. And look, it's a very difficult place to play. It's certainly not going to help Los Angeles that the weather is going to be because you can do whatever you want. They can't simulate this. They cannot simulate what it is. And Matthew Stafford at his age, the last thing he wants to be doing is playing outdoors in a game like this. And look. Again, the Eagles' offensive line, they're not even like men. They're like ridiculous men. Their left tackle at 6'9". I mean, good God, Lane Johnson, who is a tremendously large human being, looks like a twerp standing next to him. All right, so doubling it up there on Philly. But for me, but no doubts, the game of the weekend, no question whatsoever. Baltimore, Buffalo. I guess I understand the saving it for last. But me, I just think that 8:00 on Saturday night, anybody who wants to watch that game is there Saturday night at 8:00. Sunday, 6:30, I know you're prepping for, obviously, championship weekend. You are prepping for that time slot for the Super Bowl. This is going to be, I think, Pete, this is going to be like, it's going to be haymakers. I really do. It looks like Zay Flowers is listed as doubtful, I guess, at this time in this scenario. And, there will be weather. I mean, it's Buffalo in the winter. There's always weather. So Zay Flowers probably not a factor. But Baltimore can kind of just rerun this game plan they kind of used last week. And look, if I got to use Lamar's legs more to get to the ultimate goal, we're fine with it. Derrick Henry this time of the year nobody wants to ever have to get physical with Derrick Henry. This time of year, it just gets even worse. With all they can do with Lamar, it gives Henry every opportunity to just get going at full speed. And now, he's 5 yards down the field. And, even if you have three guys, you may not get him down. And for Buffalo, it's Josh Allen, and it's, Cook has had a nice year, but it is Josh Allen against the Ravens. And I think Josh can have an incredible game. And I just think at the end of the day, it's just not going to be enough.
Yeah, I got the Ravens on this. So my big thing for Buffalo is I think they've got to find a way to create explosive plays. And I don't know how successful they're going to be doing it. I think the Bills' offensive line could be a huge factor in this. And just, I do think James Cook could have a good game just because the Bills line can be so destructive, but this is what the Ravens do. They have giant bodies they'll put up on the line of scrimmage to try to shut down the running game. And I think the Ravens are going to be more effective in a game that is low scoring. I think the Ravens would welcome playing a low scoring football game with just the way that they can have Derrick Henry sort of work his way into the second half and have Lamar Jackson make some plays with his legs. And I don't know if Buffalo can keep up with that over 4 quarters. Now, if Buffalo can get out to a couple scores early and force a world where the Ravens are throwing, so be it. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I think ultimately this is where the Ravens, what they've built is going to get them to where they want to go. Now, my question is going to be obviously coming out of this, what kind of shape are Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson going to be in? Because this is my fear for the Ravens, is that they are ultimately going to do what often happens. And they are so beat up by the time they get where they need to go that they got nothing left. But for this week, I've got the Ravens.
All right. So we both, Wade Falls here is, all 4 games we are on the same side of. We're remiss if we don't at least talk about it. I don't know how the Buckeyes don't win the national championship unless they drop the ball themselves. I just don't see how. Look, Notre Dame's defense is tough and will make things difficult, but Ohio State has a defense too. I don't have enough faith in Riley Leonard to give some performance that I have never seen Riley Leonard ever give in the past. If Ohio State goes in and doesn't tip the hand or drop the ball or, break the vase, whatever. Maybe this has something to do with Jack Sawyer's article yesterday, and I'm a little fired up. That was a great piece, and it reminds you why you love sports and, just reading all of that. And obviously him, reflecting on everything it's been his entire life, essentially to get to this point and, what is basically awaiting him after this. I just don't see any other way. Go Bucks.
Yeah. So Colin Cowherd claimed that Riley Leonard was Josh Allen. He's going to need to be, for one thing. The other part is that I think is going to be a problem for Notre Dame is they are predominantly a man coverage team. I don't know how you can do that against the Buckeyes and what they have at wide receiver. The Buckeyes have an advantage over all of the Notre Dame corners. Xavier Watts is a very good player, but I don't think that's going to matter enough unless, miraculously Benjamin Morrison's hip is 100% and he's ready to go for this game. I don't even know if that would be enough. To me, I thought the national championship was last week with Ohio State, Texas, the amount of talent that was on the field. And Notre Dame has a good amount of talent, but they don't do enough of the things that are going to give the Buckeyes problems. Notre Dame has to find a way to create big plays on the passing game. I don't know where those big plays are going to go. I don't know how the Buckeyes secondary is going to give up enough of them to matter. And I think Ohio State is going to have their way with Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame will do their best to sort of keep it slow, keep it low scoring, grind it out early. I suspect in the second half, Ohio State's going to run away with this thing. And it's just going to be too much. And it's going to be pretty decisive. The biggest thing that has to happen for Notre Dame, Will Howard has to just completely melt down and make mistakes. The Buckeyes have to put the ball on the ground. And Notre Dame has to capitalize on turnovers and not only capitalize, but potentially score off of one or manage to get points off of turnovers and not field goals. They need touchdowns off turnovers. That's their recipe for victory. And I don't love it. Or special teams, coming up with a crazy block punt, whatever that creates points off those. And I just don't think those are reliable enough. They need this game to sort of be Michigan. And I don't see Mason Graham or Kenneth Grant walking through that door to just ruin the Buckeyes game.
And the other thing that, you really, really for me doesn't spell well for Notre Dame here is you don't think Jeremiah Smith is going to be held out of this one the way Texas took him out. You certainly think Ohio State is going to be prepared for that possibility. and is going to do everything they can to get their freshman playmaker obviously involved and highly, highly involved. Great first full week here, Browns 3D, the OBR. Appreciate everybody, certainly. As we're doing this and putting out this daily content, obviously you get the written work from Pete and everybody putting out, great work during the day. Then you get an opportunity here at night for reflection. We obviously, get to sit with us, talk with us on these topics. Now it's 6 o'clock, and there's a couple of nights where you're getting 3 shows, a couple of nights where you're getting 2 shows. I believe later tonight you will have Brad Ward with things I think I know about the Browns. So make sure you check all that out. Make sure you're subscribing. Certainly, if you're not an insider yet over at the OBR, I'm going to just continue to hassle you about it. I really, trust me, if this is something you are passionate about and you truly love this franchise, and you wouldn't be here otherwise if you don't, it is great information. And don't let it, fool you that some of these things are coming from, they were already put out here. They were. And now they, a week later, 2 weeks later, they seem to be getting blown up, somewhere else through somebody else's content. Don't fall for it for a second. For the small fee, go ahead, get your OBR insider package. Thanks to Pete, obviously, for joining us here. We will be back next week, full tilt. Obviously the week ended a little slow here, Browns-wise news. Hopefully next week we obviously get some more things, pick some things more up. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, Browns 3D, brought to you by the OBR. We will talk to you all next week.